It's preparing to live stream now. One moment, please. Okay. Commissioners, you are live on YouTube.
Oh,
Okay, super. Okay, it is October 21st, 2020. This is the meeting of the Transportation and Circulation Commission of Lafayette, California. I'm going to call this meeting to order, and we're going to start with a roll call. So because some people are listening that may or may not have, well, I think they all are on the web tonight. So we still, when matters of voting, we'll do roll call voting. In this case, I'll call out names and just respond, please. Dick Craig.
Present.
Lynn Hedane.
Here.
Vianney.
present.
Yeah, that's Vianney Serriere. Taylor.
Present.
All right, and Stella Lutherson.
Present.
Thank you very much. I'm Carl DiGiorgio. As noted, Greg Brown is absent as a planned absence tonight. We also have Mike Moran and Therese running the show. And there are also 3 attendees that when we get to various portions of public comment, you can use the raise your hand feature and you'll be brought in to make comments if that's your wish.
Can I?
Yes, yes, Lynn.
I can do this, but I don't see the raise the hand feature.
Well, you won't see that because you're in the actual panelist list, so you don't have that option.
Oh, I see. Okay.
If you want to speak, then just raise your hand physically.
Okay.
All right. All right, so let's move on to the adoption of the agenda. Are there any changes or is it okay as is?
Aye.
Okay, then let's someone move that adopt the agenda, please.
So moved.
All right, second, anybody? All right, that's Lynn. So all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Even though I did say roll call vote, is that necessary? No,
Not here.
let's not do that. Okay. Public comments. This is the opportunity for attendees to make comments on items that are not on the agenda. So items not on the agenda. I see one hand raised. Do you want to bring Megan in?
Qu'est-ce qui se passe? Oh, no.
I don't know if Therese, are you able to promote Megan into the panelist mode? My co-host, would you want to try that, or do you want to wait for Therese? You're on mute.
She's on mute.
I am not seeing where I have that option. I have a count of participants. And I have a share screen. This looks different than
City of Lafayette is on mute.
Oh, yes.
that's Therese.
Yeah.
All right. So
Therese, can you hear us?
If she's on mute, she's still on mute.
well, that's okay.
She can't respond.
Yeah. She might have, yeah, we don't know. I'll tell you what, let's come back to public comment later in the meeting. If that's acceptable to the other commissioners, and Mike, if you have any objection to that. We'll come back. Thank you, everybody in the attendees pool. We'll come back and pull you in when we can. So let's at this time then move to old business. Item A. Mike, did you want to say anything about that?
Just that you're familiar with this and you have selected Dick Craig to represent TransCirc, but Jonathan Fox is back again this evening, and you can see him there to walk you through and maybe talk to you about the process of an alternate. And I'll just introduce Jonathan Fox.
Thanks, Mike, and hello, commissioners.
Can we see his picture?
I am my background is no good right now, so I apologize. But so we are looking for an alternate. We had our first meeting yesterday. I should have selected an alternate at the last time I was here, but that slipped off my list. So the alternate will fill in for Dick when he is out for an extended period of time. So if he's out on medical leave, or if he has a family emergency where he's missing multiple meetings, or if we need to fill his position permanently, that's when an alternate would come in. So the alternate can certainly watch the meeting and stay involved. We'd encourage it, but they're not required or expected to attend every meeting.
So the question I have for the commissioners are, has anyone considered acting in this role already? I had sent a message to Greg Brown, but have not heard any response from him. It was too short of a time period. But I was wondering, does anybody else want to be an alternate to Dick in this process? You can.
I would.
Is this vice chairman?
This would be for the GPAC, the general plan process.
Oh,
As a backup to Dick if he is unable to attend.
A lot of reading.
Yeah.
yes. Thank you. That was my next question.
Yeah. So Stella has raised her hand. Anyone else might be interested? Okay. Then.
Excuse me, Carl.
Yes.
Jessica Lordan has raised her hand. She may be for public comments, which I missed. Sorry.
Yes. So what we'll do is let's finish this item A. We're going to finish item A, and then we'll come back to public comment right after that.
Thank you.
So
Carl, if I could just add one thing too.
Yeah.
We decided last night, monthly meetings, the third Tuesday of every month, as last night was. So for ongoing, which at least for the foreseeable future, I have no conflict.
Okay. Lynn, you have a question?
Yeah, I since I served on the last General Plan Advisory Committee for 10 years, I want to say that that is not nearly enough time unless you want staff to write the whole thing.
Okay.
A month is not going to do it.
Okay. Well, I'm open to then. I'll make a motion. Well,
You want me to make a motion?
yeah, sure. That's great.
Yeah, I move that Stella is our alternate. And I think these two will be perfect.
And a second.
I'll second.
I second.
Okay. Thank you, Dick. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you. And thank you, Stella, for volunteering.
Yeah.
And for members of the public that may or may not be online right now, I encourage you to go to the City of Lafayette website, to the front, the top page, the main page. On the mid to left side, there's a link, a button that says General Plan Info that gets you to this GPAC website. And it's got a lot of materials, and also encourage you to look at the library tab. There's a lot of online materials available. So thank you, Stella, for that. Okay, at this point, let's go back to public comments. We had two people that had raised their hand previously.
Yes, we have Jessica Lordman,
Mhm.
followed by Megan Mittman.
Okay. So why don't you bring them in one at a time?
Can we see them or will that not
Yep.
work?
Yes, you will.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay,
can
great.
hear you.
Hi, my name is Perfect. My name is Jessica Lordan. I live on Birdhaven Court. My family and I moved here in 2017. I have 3 kids. The oldest 2 go to Lafayette Elementary, and the youngest is at Joyful Beginnings, which is right across the street. I filed a transportation action request back in December of 2019 after several months of back and forth between myself and the city planner at the time, Justin. We are working to try to find a safe way to get kids from Birdhaven and St. Mary's to school, to Stanley and to Lafayette Elementary. Right now, the options are to walk down Topper, which is a narrow road that sees a super high volume of traffic during school drop-off hours. It's about 180 cars in a 30-minute time period. Or to walk down St. Mary's, which is completely unpaved. There's no crosswalks crossing from across the top of Topper. And the backside of Stanley is used as drop-off for the Stanley parents. So right now, there's really no safe way for us to access school. I was working on this starting back in May of 2019. In October of 2019, my 6-year-old, who just turned 6, was run off the road by a mom taking her kid to Stanley. He was thankfully jumped off into the rocks and was okay, other than scratches from the ground. But I literally put my hand out and was able to touch her car. I ran up and I asked her what she was doing, and she said she saw us, but she was trying to get to school and pushed us off the road. So it's really a safety concern. It's something that has been addressed time and time again, and something needs to be done to this before something more serious happens. Thank you.
Hold on there now. So, Lynn, do you have a question for the
Yeah, how does Birdhaven interact with the trail? How do you, that doesn't help you? I'm missing.
No, we have to go down. We have to go down Topper in order to access the trail, or we have to go down St. Mary's to Hope.
No.
And then down the trail that way. Birdhaven does not have direct trail access.
Yeah. Is there any? Have you checked with all the neighbors? No one's willing to let you.
Yeah. We've beaten that to death.
Now your kids don't go to Lafayette Elementary. They go to Burton Valley Elementary. Is that right? Or
No.
I have a first grader and a kindergartner that are both at Lafayette Elementary.
Okay.
And I have a 3.5-year-old who goes to Joyful Beginnings Preschool, which is at the church across the street.
Mm-hmm.
So us, along with there's like 18 or 19 kids on our street. We're all trying to get down to that area. And right now there's no safe way for us to get there.
All right, Deanne?
Yes.
Sorry.
Is there a sidewalk or not even? Nothing at all?
No.
No.
Okay. So I think this comment actually touches on one of our later agenda items, and so I want to ask. We will ask Mike Moran about this during the walkway plan discussion.
Mm.
So thank you very much for your comments.
Thank
The
you.
next speaker is Megan Mittman, followed by a telephone caller, 1415 ending in 315. Megan Mittman coming up.
Hi, this is Megan. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'd be happy to turn on my camera, but it's not giving me that option. So you're just going to get my voice and I'll be brief. Live at 559 Marywood, right in front of Burton Valley. And I've been joining you all and chatting quite a bit. Just want to really appreciate that the group is meeting again. We've been disappointed to see cancellations. So really glad to see the group back together. Also really glad to see the joint meeting of the City Council and the school board on Monday. Was really thrilled to see that pop up. And I just think the focus on safe routes to school, as the previous caller was mentioning, is just such a critical issue. I know the Safe Track will not be updated on the agenda tonight, but I just want to reiterate the local road safety plan funding that the city has and the opportunity to do a Vision Zero plan on the heels of Safe Track. And I hope that you all will make sure to agendize that and be considering that. I also don't see the Burton Valley pilot on the agenda tonight, and just want to reiterate.
Excuse
the
me,
importance of
Megan.
that. Yep, sure.
I'm sorry. So it is an agenda item. We are going to, even though the report's not going to be.
Oh, okay, sure.
We are going to talk about it, and I was going to ask staff to include your letter from Tuesday, September 29th in the package when it comes back. So I didn't mean to cut you off, but it is something we're going to talk about.
Oh, great. Okay, I just saw that as the report wasn't ready, so you wouldn't be talking about it. But that's fantastic.
Well, I wanted to, so yes.
Great, perfect.
Right.
The Burton Valley pilot, I don't see on there, although I do see it on there on Monday. Just wanted to make a point of the nighttime urgency of that pilot, as that we're getting the daylight hours ending earlier, and people are still out walking and biking. The importance of having that be sooner rather than later, and also as we discuss a return to school potential, the urgency of having that ready for that. And then just a reminder to this group that you all had discussed doing the working groups and kind of the small groups of this, and would just love to see that. And if there's anything I can be doing to support you all, I know with city staff being short-staffed, there's a need to do that for more residents. And I just would like to see that moving forward. I thought that was a great idea from the last meeting. So thanks for the chance to comment.
Any questions for Megan? All right. Thank you very much, Megan.
Thank you.
The next possible speaker is calling in by phone, area code 415, ending in 315. He has no option to raise a hand, so I will allow that person to talk now.
Hello.
I'm not hearing anything.
The
No.
telephone muted. I see.
I am. No, I've
just-
asked it to unmute, but there is nothing. We could come back.
1 second.
I think there's a way to raise your
This is-
hand via the phone. I think it's like a *9 or a *8. I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
don't remember exactly the code, but there is a way if a telephone caller would like to raise their hand or be recognized to speak.
If the caller on the phone could try a *9 and see if that works.
Or *8.
Okay. It doesn't appear to be working. So, and the hands, yeah. So,
I don't see anything.
yeah, I'm afraid this is not. My apologies to the person on the phone. If the person on the phone, please send an email to the staff, and they'll get it to us, and we'll consider what you had wanted to say. All right. All right. Is there any? I don't see any other hands raised.
No further hands.
Okay, so let's move back. Let's move on back to item 5B, which is the walkways plan update. Mike, did you want to frame this up for us and what you're expecting?
Yes. Hello, commissioners. Good evening. I wanted to just kind of remind us that this is one of your goals. You know, one of your short-term goals is to update this plan. And it does tie into what a speaker said a little earlier. For example, Topper Lane, Vianney, no, there's no sidewalk or walkway. And nor is Topper on that plan. At least I don't believe yet. In fact, there's the request to add it to the plan. So I wanted to bring this back to the commission and basically assign some homework to review the plan, not due tonight, just to put it out tonight, to review the plan. So that was included, you know, as part of your agenda packet. Let me know if you would like a hard copy or anything different from staff, and we'll be happy to provide that. And I also thought that I would just ask, based on your experience, your discussions with community members, whatever, your individual priorities. Just what are your two tops? It could be three, but where would your priorities be? If you had money to fund it, where would you put a walkway now? And where's the priorities? There is a priority section in the plan already, but part of this is just like a litmus test to see, does that still hold? If 5 commissioners all come up with the same project, then we probably should give strong consideration to that project, for example. So it's just kind of a test. You all live in different areas of the city. It's just kind of request for information. It'll also help you get more familiar with the walkways plan, and it'll be a start to updating this. And the updates could be, we're adding different sections. We're adding sections that we actually think are a higher priority than others that have been on the plan for a while, or you revisit sections that have been on the plan that you want to reprioritize. And then we could see if we could get some funding for it. Yes, Lynn.
You're muted, Lynn. Use the unmute button on the bottom left. You're still muted. Just click on the X. Therese, can you unmute Lynn for us?
Does that work?
You got it.
Yes.
Good. There were several that interested me, but I was wondering, times have changed since we did all this, and I worked on all this also. But I was looking at the priority list, and for example, when you get to 2nd Street, it was hardly even a consideration when we were doing all this. Now there are young families and people and kids all over everywhere on 2nd, particularly north of Mount Diablo Boulevard. And I guess I didn't drive down to see if we have any sidewalks there at all, but I know that they're in the road walking and sending their trikes and so on. There must be at least one sidewalk on the east side. But is staff going to evaluate the number of kids and people who are using these streets in any way?
So we potentially could. It would probably take a cooperative survey with the schools and or the neighborhoods. We could, and that could be part of this updating process. And I mean, you brought up a good point that things have changed, which is why we do updates, and why I'm saying don't necessarily be tainted by what's done before. Go out and get a fresh view of what you believe is important now for the conditions we have now, and just as the starting place.
Before we get into specific streets, I hope the other commissioners might be interested in asking or participating in some questions about the walkways plan as it exists now. I mean, I looked through this honestly for the first time before this meeting, and there's things that I don't understand about it. And so I wondered if it's agreeable to the other commissioners, just you can nod or shake your head if I can ask some questions of Mike, and if anybody else has questions also, then we can ask. And then we'll get into actual streets and get a straw poll on what people might want to change. Does that sound okay?
Sure.
Okay. All right. And then also, in this process, we'll take later on. I guess we'll take some public comment later also. So when I went through this document, and I echo what Lynn said, and the way that the basis of selection, it was section 3, the basis of selection described the process, basically looking at pedestrian use coupled with high traffic areas and so forth, and including item C, used by children on their way to and from schools, and individuals with impaired mobility, or we could say disabilities for that matter. It got me thinking about what Lynn was saying about traffic flows. And so when I looked at the lists later on, we'll talk about the priority lists. I had the same question Lynn did, whether or not those lists are still adequate. And you can answer all these later or as we go. So that was more of a comment, but that was more of a comment on the need for data, and specifically when it comes to children in schools. I think that's, in my mind, that's almost the priority, the focus on safety. What mechanisms since the last revision, it might be, I don't know, including the TAR reports that that Jessica had mentioned earlier as one mechanism, police reports of accidents or near misses. So are those the types of documents and data that you might be keeping, or that we should consider when talking about specific streets?
Well, certainly a transportation action request that specifically is asking for a walkway is certainly part of that. We have not done any data collection as far as numbers in any location, likely since this update. I know we have done that for project specific things, like if we have a proposed walkway, or and we go in and we're basically just looking at one street because that's all the funding we'll have, and we will solicit data for those types of things. It has been our past practice. Part of what I started with was that doesn't have to be what we continue in the future. There may be other methods. I would certainly recommend working with the school systems because if we're considering, walkways around schools and the number of children and so forth, we reach out to them to get some of their general data for grant applications, like the two that we've recently submitted, which were both for walkways projects near schools. So they have some general numbers, like they think, 70 kids are going to walk and 30 kids are going to ride bicycles and so forth. So they have that information, but that's general. That doesn't tell you how many are walking specifically off of Birdhaven around the corner onto Topper, or down 2nd Street, or Moraga Boulevard, and what pathway they're coming from, or Brook Street, or, on and on and on, or from Release Valley Road to Spring Hill School. There's just a lot of different, a lot of different routes near schools just right off the bat.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. In section 3.3, completion of existing routes, it brought to mind, of the lists that were in the appendix, are there any of those that need to be removed that they've already been installed?
So I think portions of some have been, we could refine that better by saying, a portion of this has been done. Commissioner Witherspoon had a question, for example, for Stanley Springbrook. There's a walkway there. It's still listed as put a walkway in from Camino Diablo to Bacon. Well, most of that's been put in, but it's not off the list because a portion of it still hasn't been. So it can be updated in that regard as well. And honestly, we could do better mapping, because the map doesn't show you one side of the street versus the other. And it would be nice to show that, a location of a walkway where we have one and where we don't. So I think there's room for improvement on this update that's just, clearer to anybody that looks at it, what we have done, what we want to do, and perhaps a reprioritization, I think, is a big part of this as well, as commissioners have already mentioned.
And thank you. I was going to mention the map also. I think in the long run, it would be nice to develop a map that is basically a Google overlay map, so that we could zoom in and out on things. Lynn, you had a question?
No, I was just going to say another example of what you're talking about is I believe that we did complete from the Moortrack project. I did believe we did complete the east path on Moraga Road all the way from Old Jonas Hill on the east side of the street all the way down to St. Mary's Road. I think that link that is now mentioned as needing something doesn't anymore and hasn't probably for the last 8 years at least.
Okay. Another question I had, which is, this is a theoretical question and it's not going to be answered, right? So in the discussion about right-of-ways and so forth, and condemnation of property as a way of getting I know it's a very sticky subject, right? But at some point, I think it'd be useful to query the Creeks Committee has a process where they had over a period of time developed a mechanism for as properties transfer, they were able to get a right of way along the creek. And so it's a real snake pit, I know. I just wanted to say at some point that would be worth exploring for certain portions of certain roads that have absolutely no public right of way. For example, like St. Mary's Road during a long downhill section. I'm just bringing that up as that'd be interesting to hear more about the process of how they came up with their own mechanism on that. That was just a curiosity I had. All right.
Yeah, I had a similar thought, Carl, too, in terms of whether or not there has been any history in Lafayette of acquiring any portions of right-of-way through eminent domain.
I couldn't hear that. It was a little garbled for me.
Yeah, I had a similar question in terms of just the history in Lafayette of whether or not we have historically acquired any portions and right-of-ways through eminent domain.
Right. And of course,
So-
the linchpin on that will be money.
Yeah, and in my 20 plus years here, we haven't. And honestly, you typically don't. But the issue is not necessarily right of way, because usually there is right of way. The issue is usually there's also a stone pillar mailbox and fence and other yards on that right of way that would have to be relocated or pushed back. And in essence, you're taking what residents have considered their front yard away. So that's usually, or you need to cut down trees or something else that there isn't anything you can build without destroying something else. And every time you destroy something, it becomes a little bit controversial. So that's kind of the bigger working issue. In most cases on the routes I've seen, you could make the right of way work. There isn't necessarily a legal standing from the resident. It just might not necessarily be a nice thing to make the right of way work from their perspective.
Okay, Dick, you had your question up?
Yeah, for my couple of questions. So if the list is somewhat, goes back a while. So we just heard the first speaker, there was a TAR. If I understood it correctly, it was to put a sidewalk on Topper Lane. How many of those are out there since the list that you sent us was done? I mean, there are a lot of these things, or one or two? Or
there are others, but they are already on the walkways plan. And just for a process sake, I mean, Topper Lane wouldn't necessarily jump to the list for this is a project we should do, next year. Typically and historically, it would first be added to the walkways plan list, right? That would be the next step. And that in fact was part of the TAR, traffic request, so that it's at least in place to be considered. So I am not aware of others that aren't on the walkway plan. I'm aware of other locations where people want walkways.
okay. All right, then the second question, I'm sorry, maybe you alluded to it, but a little more information, like Lafayette Circle's on the list. So I drove around down there. I mean, it's pretty well sidewalked. I guess there might be a short gap here or there. So it doesn't seem, to me, didn't seem very significant. is there, things have changed since that was done, or?
So things have changed since that was done. There's been some development there on the sections where there were gaps. So,
Okay,
you know, again, that's another perfect example of why we need to update this list. On first of all, because we can check
Okay.
off some of it that we've already done it.
yeah. that didn't
Lynn,
seem
you
much.
were next.
Thank you.
Oh,
Lynn, you were next, and then Vianney after that.
Yeah, one point, a couple points that are just statements. That speaker that we had with the problem with her little kids, I thought she had problems along St. Mary's Road, which was the main reason that Yvonne and I went to work to get ourselves the Lafayette Moraga Trail, was because the kids were walking in the street on St. Mary's Road to get to school. Another statement I wanted to make was, I see in this plan, safe, the word safe. I always object to that. There is no such thing as safe when it comes to roads and vehicles. Safer, not safe. Don't let anybody tell you that that's the case. As to the rights of way, we took right of way when we built the memorial, the Veterans Memorial. E.G. Craig had property in there. We simply took it. We didn't even ask him. He didn't even know. Poor guy. I felt sorry for him. And he was mad. I think he sued, but I can't remember precisely. And then let's see, that was the, and we gave right away. In the 1980s, people were interested in possibly widening Glorietta all the way up to the Moraga border. And the Traffic Commission looked into that. We called in several geologists who said, never, that road is so unstable. You tried to put a road in there, you would destabilize 17 houses. So we gave up for many of those 17, anyone who wanted to claim it, we gave up our own right of way to them. And some of them were delighted to have the right of way and others didn't accept it. So we've done both.
Vianney?
how many feet are we talking for right of way?
I don't know of any, Vianney, but it would be very case specific, right? It would just be what you would need to create a walkway. If you wanted a class 1 pathway, you need a minimum of 8 feet wide with shoulders, with a couple feet on the shoulders, so that if you had like a bicycle handle, you know, it wouldn't be right up against a wall or a tree or something else. So,
So it
or
varies.
you could have a 4-foot sidewalk, which, you know, is the minimum that you could make ADA compliant.
I see. Thank you.
For
Okay.
the one on Birdhaven Court, if you look at that, there's 3 properties at the end of Birdhaven Court that are alongside the trails. So if you were to try to cut in between any of those 3 properties that abut the trails in order to gain access between Birdhaven and the trails, it would be the amount of clearance that you would need for such a path.
Yeah, so I do know, I have a little history on Birdhaven. I know people that live there. I know Jessica spoke and she said, you know, we've kind of beat that to death. They did used to have access to that trail on Birdhaven based on the benevolence of one property owner, and that property's turned over and they said, no, we don't want you walking, you know, through our yard to the trail. And unfortunately, there are those multiple properties, but they're not real wide. There isn't, you know, there wouldn't be something that most property owners would want to turn over a 5-foot wide easement for example, to provide a walkway. Certainly that would be the safest option for Birdhaven. And Lynn, Jessica earlier did mention St. Mary's Road too, because there's 2 options. They could go around on St. Mary's Road or they could take Topper. Neither have walkways at this time at those locations. So if one became harder than another or much more expensive than another, you know, one of those 2 may at least help. And you could, you know, you could sort it out based on which is more feasible to implement quicker, for example.
Okay. So other questions about the report itself? Okay. I don't see, I want to make a call for public.
Still has her hand up.
Yeah, I want to make a call for public comment on this item. I see some hands up.
Yes.
Stella had her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Stella first, why don't you go ahead and,
Yeah, just a suggestion or for the future when this report is updated, when the plan is updated, it would be great to have linear miles or linear feet, I guess is the better measure on these segments, just so we have an idea of kind of the scope. Because some are huge and some are probably like little bits that might be more easily implemented.
that's a great suggestion. So Therese, can you let us hear a public comment?
Yes, we have two people, Megan Mittman, followed by Jessica Lordan. Admitting Megan now.
Again, a few specific comments on this. First is your local road safety plan funds that you have can be used to pay for an inventory. And you should have about half of the inventory done already because the CCTA has done it for downtown just recently. I just oversaw that with artificial intelligence data collection. That's a pretty quick way to do this type of data collection now. So you could add on to that and do the rest of the city. Burton Valley is noticeably missing from the walkways plan, and we do have a tar in for the Burton Valley pilot trail on street, which certainly would be considered a walkway. And my understanding in talking with other residents over in the Spring Hill neighborhood is that was very much what was needed in order to remove parking over on Quant. So that would very much support the designation of Marywood, in addition to it being in front of an elementary school, to have that included, as would Rower and potentially some other streets in Burton Valley. And I would just say that pedestrian and bicycle volume is not necessarily the best way to be prioritizing, because you don't count swimmers in a river to figure out to put a bridge in. You figure out potential. And I think there are a lot of people that are not walking and biking to school because they don't feel safe. And so I would look at walk sheds and just distance and potential for shifting to walking and biking, not just the number of people there right now as you think about priority. Thanks.
I'm sorry, Megan. So what was the word you said? Walk sheds?
Walk shed. So it's just kind of a term for kind of like you can do an analysis on a network to figure out like how far away you could get in 5 minutes or 10 minutes on a map. And so often we do that for safe routes to school planning to figure out kind of what would the 5 minute or 10 minute or quarter mile or half mile walk shed of a school be.
Okay.
Questions,
Lynn?
Yeah, what kind of data was collected by the CCTA and how did they come by it?
Yeah, we did it in the pedestrian priority areas for all of the county, which includes most of downtown Lafayette. And we did it with what's called artificial intelligence data collection with a firm that runs an algorithm on an aerial photograph and is able to turn that into a map layer that looks at presence of sidewalks, presence of crosswalks, and a few other things like whether there's a channelized right turn and some other data like that. So we have that for a portion of Lafayette, but you could use your local road safety plan funds to fill in the rest of the city if you need to get just a refreshed inventory. It also gives you width of the roads and some other really helpful things to figure out what might be feasible.
Were these pictures taken from a drone? How did you get numbers of pedestrians, for example, downtown at a certain corner?
It's not the numbers of pedestrians, it's just the presence of infrastructure like sidewalks and roadways and crosswalks.
Okay,
so.
You're not doing usage. Thank you. That's what I wanted to know.
Sure, absolutely.
Any other questions of the speaker? Thanks again, Megan.
We have three more speakers, Jessica Lordan, followed by Abby Fateman, and then Jennifer Lieberman.
Okay.
Hi, this is Jessica.
Hi. Hi,
Right,
Jessica, we can hear you.
Great. So I just want to kind of specify that I'm not necessarily, the residents of Birdhaven, we're not dead set on putting a sidewalk in on Popper. We are open to other suggestions and other ways to get the 24 kids that live on Birdhaven Court to school and to the trails safely. And I ran into this with Justin when I was working with him a lot. I feel like when we say sidewalk or walkway, everyone thinks of the white sidewalk with, the lined streets. We just need any safe way to get, or safer, as Lynn said, safe way to get our kids to school. The 2013 Safe Routes to School report specifically mentioned Topper Lane, and the issues were speeding and the lack of the sidewalk or walkway. I will say we are one of the few families that, when we were in-person school, chose to walk our kids to school. Everyone else drives the half mile, just adding to the traffic congestion. That's all.
Questions? Lynn?
Gonna say, good for you. Good for you.
Well, it's been very harrowing, and I actually walked with a GoPro for the first several weeks of school, and I showed some of the footage to Justin, who said it's not helpful. But you know, there's a lot of close calls, and I've got 3 little ones, and at the time I had a stroller.
Oh,
So this is something that needs to be addressed.
yeah.
Thank you for those comments.
Let me ask a question.
Oh, Lynn?
Yeah. So, what would you envision, Mike? What would you, just as a quick fix, what would you envision? It doesn't have to be something long. Can you help them
I don't
out?
think there's a quick fix, but it would be less expensive, I think, and less divisive to put a walkway on St. Mary's Road around the corner. Basically connect Birdhaven to Topper, and then extend it to the west towards, you know, Stanley, the back of the field there, and make a more continuous walkway all the way to Moraga Road, right? Because there's right away there. I don't have to take people's front yards. I don't have to cut down 24 trees, or I don't have to change your street into a one-way street. I mean, there's a lot of different options you can do to make things happen, but depending on who you talk to, those aren't things that people want done. I mean, you know, there's trade-offs in everything we do, because it wasn't master planned in. We didn't master plan in walkways or sidewalks, or certainly class 1 pathways. But we're finding, particularly with the environment we're in now, it would be nice to have some of those things.
Yep.
So can you go into a little more detail on the process? So how should we approach not only this specifically, there's an existing TAR, but is this, what's the process for moving forward on this specifically, and then in general for the other streets we identify?
So in all cases, you want to add any section or area or region to the master plan, to the walkways plan, right? Because that will make it eligible for grant funding, more likely, right? Historically, sections we've added, we've gotten some, whether it's Safe Route to School or some other funding, at least partial funding from grants. Those are getting harder to get, particularly for Lafayette. It doesn't mean we won't continue to apply. We will, and we'll see what we get. But really, you know, we don't have a funding source for even right now maintaining the walkways that have already been built in Lafayette. And I have several that are falling apart. And I plan to have a meeting with our Capital Improvement Assessment Committee to have a discussion on just that. That will certainly be one of the agenda items. And quite honestly, before we add anything new, we're going to need to maintain some of the ones we've already put in, whether we want to or not, because they're going to be a liability. So funding is going to be the biggest obstacle, not really whether we should take part of your front yard or cut down those trees. It's really funding.
Right. So I heard the process would include adding it to the walkways plan is the first step.
That is the first step.
Okay. Vianney, you had a question?
Yes. Is there any way of making the streets narrower and then get 3 feet for walking with some kind of a divider?
So those are some of the types of suggestions that'll certainly come up in the pilot study for the Burton Valley area, for example, where they have really a wide street.
They do. Yes, they do. Yeah.
But there's a trade-off there too, such as will give away parking, right? But I'm not taking a front yard, and I'm not even having to change, the route of traffic. So those are options where there's the real estate to do such.
Yeah, and it would also slow down drivers, I would think, narrower streets.
It can, we've choked down sections in the city before, and we think it does slow them down at least a little bit in between the choke points.
Yeah, Moraga Boulevard, I'm sorry, is a good example.
All right, let's move. Lynn.
Yeah, can we hear from Abby? And then
I was just calling for the next speaker.
Yes, the next speaker is Abby Fateman, followed by Jennifer Lieberman.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, welcome.
Apologies. I'm Abby Fateman, not Richard Fateman. I have my camera on. Are we not doing cameras?
No, you can.
Interesting.
I can't see Abby.
Okay.
It's not working for the speakers.
Yeah.
So.
All right, that's fine. Also, just so the commissioners know, you guys are showing up only when you're speaking. We don't see the whole commission, so I don't know if that's on purpose or accidental, but we only see speakers as part of the audience.
Thank you for telling us that. While you're speaking, Teresa, look at the controls and see if you can set it to the gallery. Is it the gallery view, not the speaker view?
I'll see what I can do.
Great, thanks. All right.
Go ahead, Abby.
Okay, I'll dive into my comments. Hopefully I won't take 3 minutes, but you never know. Sometimes I get carried away. So let's see. I think one thing, I appreciate you guys looking at this, and this is interesting because I come from the perspective of having served on the Parks, Trails, and Recreation Commission and being on the Trails Subcommittee. And I know there's this tension between trails and walkways, and you can see that on this map that's in this plan, in that you see none of the trails. You don't see the Lafayette Moraga Trail, you don't see the Murray Lane Trail. And so what you miss is the complete picture. And I think really what you need to be looking at is stepping back and saying, what are the routes and the connections we need to make, and where are there gaps? There might be very easy gaps to fill to create a complete, safer route for people to move from one place to the other. And those would be perhaps low-hanging fruit. I don't know, because I don't know the specific sections, but without looking at the trails, you're not going to know that. Jeff Bellinger, who was on the Trails Subcommittee with me, and I think he's now chair of PTR, he did a masterful effort in the Trails master plan. I don't know if that's been finalized and updated yet, but he actually created everything in Google Earth. So you could look at everything dynamically on screen and see where connections were, and you could see it over aerials, and you could see where connections were missing. I think it would be wonderful if we did the same thing with our sidewalks and pathways, so we could integrate those with the trails and really see where there are gaps. Otherwise, you don't really know what your problem is because you're not seeing the full picture of it. So that's one thing. The other thing is I think it'd be important to add to this map, like where are the schools or business centers? So we know where we're trying to get people from. Community hubs to parks, community hubs to trails, community hubs to schools. Where do we want people to be moving, and how do we reach the most people? And so I appreciate this plan, but it is outdated from what would be expected nowadays from a local agency or city. And I know it's a huge effort, and I don't want to have analysis paralysis around this, because there certainly are quick build projects that could happen to benefit this community. But I do think there needs to be a step taken back to really understand what exactly is the problem, what are the ways we can address it, and how do we start connecting people in more safer ways from communities to places where they're going or where we want them to go. I think the last thing, maybe that's it. I think I'll stop there. But I think those are my major points. But I really do think there's a lot to learn, or in communication with PTR about trails and walkways and how they interact, because it really is siloed. You know, when I was on PTR, we were told, no, that's a pathway. We can't talk about that. And I was like, oh my gosh, like really? So anyway, that's it. Thank you.
Hang on, Abby. We've got some questions. Lynn first.
No, I was just going to say, send Jeff over to help Mike. He could use that help. We do try to do that, Abby, and we pretty much know where those all are. We don't have them on maps necessarily that are so easily seen as what Jeff did, but we don't have many trails downtown, and we could use some. Danville has carved a lot of them back and forth around their city. They just sort of decided to do it, and they did. Maybe we could do that too between buildings and so on. Anyway, I just wanted to say, send Jeff. Mike could use it.
Well,
I think just also in response to that, we've worked with, in other areas where there's creek restoration work happening, incorporating creekside paths into those things. So you see, like over by the gazebo, there's a trail that goes along the creek, over by Lee Creekside Park, so there are places where we can work with other commissions that have other topic areas to integrate movement corridors.
yeah. Gail, did you have a question? No? Okay. Mike, do you have any response on any of this, or should we move on to another person?
No, I think the commenters, Abby's comments are very good. They reinforce what I said earlier about the mapping. I certainly agree that the mapping's outdated. We can do better.
Yeah.
Google Earth was brought up. We could certainly look at what Park Trails and Rec has done. And Jeff is he's quite a contributor for so long now. I'm sure it's very good work. I've worked with him before on other projects. Yeah. So adding the schools, adding the places you want to be, the little gap closures, I don't think that would be a problem to add as part of updating this map. It all goes together basically. So it just should be more clear for whoever's looking at this in the future after we do this update.
Yeah, I appreciate those comments, because I had the same feelings when I looked at the materials. Trying to zoom in on the map in the handout was, I know it's a creation of years ago when it was converted to a PDF, and I get it. So, okay, thank you very much, Abby. Who's next?
Thanks, and the gallery view is working great. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
The next speaker is Jennifer Lieberman.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Terrific. All right. Jennifer Lieberman from Burton Valley. First and foremost, I'm so just heartened to see you all meeting again. I'm thrilled that this is on the agenda. I have 2 comments and 2 questions. The first of which Abby just articulated, I think, better than anyone, about how do we really elevate the criteria for this walkway plan and be much more strategic around how end users are looking to get places. So I think that absolutely makes sense. The other comment that I wanted to make is, in addition to taking a look at data, and Megan has offered some great sources, I think it's also interesting to understand what people are interested in doing. And I know that in Burton Valley in the fall of 2018, we surveyed 90 families, and nearly 80% of them said that if safer facilities were available, they would bike and walk more frequently. In the same survey, 85% of respondents said that as drivers, they would also feel more safe. So again, I think we don't just analyze who's swimming in the river to determine if we build a bridge. We try to understand what is the potential. And, if you don't need further convincing, there's quite a bit of survey data that has already happened. And the 2013 Safe Routes to School, I think, has some of that data. There's a lot that has been collected. The 2 questions that I have for you is, the first is, when was this walkways plan last reviewed by the Circulation Commission? Looking at it, to me, it looks like 2015. Yeah, Lynn?
No, you want me to respond to that? We haven't gone over the entire project because we've been tied up doing other projects. But we have added to it periodically. And so you'll see additions that have been inserted. And I have to say, there's no such thing as safe routes to school. I want to keep repeating that. There are safer routes to school, but not safe routes to school. Get that out of your head, please.
We get that, Lynn. I think the question, I don't know if Mike, if you have a more complete answer on that, but in the document at the end, like pages 14, 15, that area, there was a list of updates.
That's right.
Yeah, and also I found, and to that point, I found it was interesting as a place to start almost backwards. You know, maybe one thing we should be doing is also looking at what were the most recent additions that were passed by the city council, for example. If we're thinking of like Akalani's Road, for example. We'll talk about that later, though. Anything else for Jennifer?
Great.
Jennifer, you had 2 questions, right?
Yeah, so I guess the document says that this plan will be reviewed once a year.
Yeah.
And I guess I just challenge you to figure out a way to right, Mike, you're shaking your head because it hasn't been. I think it would be helpful to think about, how do you institutionalize this? This is a value. So how do we make sure that this is attended to? And then my parting question is, I know money is always an issue. And I think we are discussing a quick build project for Burton Valley that is going to have a far less cost than building a sidewalk. So I would ask you, can we, without putting financial consideration on the table as criteria for whether a street gets on the master walkways plan, why don't we put them on the plan first and then get creative about thinking how we fund these? Because I think there are some new ways to do this. And I wouldn't want a fear of not having money to prevent us from putting this on the list.
Mike, I don't think that the cost of a project was, or let me say it differently, was the cost of projects a barrier to streets being added to the plan or areas?
I never updated, I never worked with the transportation planner or this commission on updating that list. Lynn obviously has, but not typically. It's typically you would, if you would, for example, there's a walkway up Moraga Road, right? Which would be very expensive. There's walkways we put on there that will require Carroll Lane, require very expensive retaining walls. We don't not put them on there. We'd still like to see a pedestrian pathway of some sort or a bike route of some sort, even if they're going to be, much more costly per linear foot to generate than another location.
I agree. Any other questions for Jennifer? All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have one more caller, and it is the caller with the area code 415. Sorry.
Hi, this is Jennifer Paul calling in. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Sorry, I'm on my cell phone. I was one of those most recent champions for a sidewalk to be amended on the master walkway plan. In 2015, I was the one who put in a request with then transportation planner Leah Greenblatt for Quant Court up to Pleasant Hill Road on the north side of Quant Road. And I just wanted to just kind of express that the experience was very painful. It was very difficult, and we almost did not get approval from the Transportation Planning Commission at the time. And it went through, and then we got funding, and it's been a huge difference in the neighborhood for people being dropped off to Spring Hill, Akalani's, whether you live here or children are just being dropped off here. And I do hope that the process for those that want to get onto the walkway plan is, I think what was said before, is looking to the schools and the people around the schools perhaps for input. I'm happy to, after the meeting or by tomorrow, send you, again, the city of Roseville has an amazing example of what they've done in terms of computerizing all the directions in which children walk to school. So I'll send you and that's kind of a map that you were discussing earlier today. And looking, I know somebody else had brought up the 2013 Safe Route to School. One of the things that they're right that there was a topper lane and other things were not on the master walkway plan that were in that report. Also in that report is looking at Quant Road on the south side. So there are lots of updating that I think needs to be done to that plan. So that's all.
Lynn?
Yeah, hi, Jennifer. I just
Hi.
to ask Jennifer, can you tell us what some of those changes were that made all the difference in the world?
Yes. So the north side of Quant is a blind curve. So we have Candy and Quant courts. For those of you familiar with the area, there's 2 courts that lead up to getting to Pleasant Hill Road. So these 2 courts, since they're right by Acalanes and they're right near Stanley Middle School bus and they're by Spring Hill Elementary. So we have 3 schools where children either walk or get dropped off. So the biggest thing was that our courts, which are utilized because of traffic all the time for kids being dropped off, now parents could say, so it's not just like myself who lives here, you can safely drop your child off and they can walk up to school. And that never could happen before. So we were getting congestion up by Quant and Pleasant Hill Road, and now we're not getting that same congestion. I mean, we still get the cars dropping on and off, but you're not getting the circular traffic that we were getting before trying to drop off their children. Living here, sorry, go ahead.
Why are you not getting the cars? I don't understand.
So what we're doing is now the cars before there wasn't a safe place to drop them off. They had to drop them off on the south side of Quant Road somewhere, and then they were trying to make the turn. So now they're coming into either of the cul-de-sacs to make and they can now drop their children on the Quant side of the road. I'm sorry, on the north side of the road, either on Quant Court or Candy Court.
But they still have to cross Pleasant Hill Road, right?
Yes, but I'm talking about the traffic. And so before we used to get much more of a mix of pedestrians and cars
mixed together,
mixing on Quant Road. And now you have sidewalks relatively a little bit on either side. So it's a much safer drop-off system at this moment.
Wasn't that funded by monies that were set aside every year for some sort of a locally funded project? And wasn't that a big master plan, as I recall?
We had to get it on the master plan in 2015, and we had to bring the neighbors. There were other neighbors, the ones on Quant Road that didn't want it because it did encroach slightly on a little bit on their property. And we almost did not pass it through the master walkway plan.
So when you were mentioning the need to, I'm sorry, Lynn, hold on. When you were mentioning the need to improve the process, were you referring to this issue of encroachment that was a barrier?
And it wasn't, yes, there was a barrier, but it was at the time the Transportation Commission who was just saying they didn't think it was necessary because there was a south side crosswalk. And there was some slight opposition from those 4 houses on Quant Road.
Right. So the reason I asked that is because just to remind everybody that this is, I think Micah had intended this to be kind of a quick review and get ideas on the names of some streets. And this is going to come back in a bigger process. So what I was just looking for is if you have any ideas when this comes back and we do this again, hopefully we'll get quicker through the history part of it. But if the public has ideas on how to improve this process as we go through and re-examine the master walkways later, I'm interested in seeing or either talking to you or seeing it in a letter. Okay, sorry. So anything else for Jennifer? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Lynn?
Yeah, on that list was, I noticed on Spring Hill from Goyak.
Hold on a second, Lynn, just 1 second. So I don't see any more hands raised. If you don't have anybody else, we're gonna close the public comment portion of the meeting. And so I don't see any hands up. So let's go back. Okay, so Lynn, you want to continue with your comment?
Yeah, I can't imagine, excuse me, a route to school. It seems to me, isn't there a ditch there? What's the problem that we don't have a walkway over there. I didn't drive over there, I should have, but why is there not a walkway along Spring Hill that is useful and takes the kids to school? How did that happen?
I thought we were talking about Quant.
We are talking about, no, the other side of the street.
Well, I don't think that we need to get into this right now.
Well, but it's one of the projects on the list.
Well, why don't we add that? Okay, so I think
we should agendize.
Let's go back to what the agenda item was saying. Mike was looking for recommendations on additional walkway segments.
And that was a walkway segment.
Right. So are you saying you want to make sure that that's on?
Yeah. So no, I'm not asking for that tonight.
No. Okay. Mike, you want to clarify what you want?
So I am asking for that. I wanted, because this is part of the, I mean, I actually think this has been good discussion on past process and goals where we'd like to get as far as what this plan will look like when we're done. I wanted to mostly bring it back to remind the commission this was one of our action items to take action on and work on. And my intent was to have you do exactly what you've already started to do, which is look at the plan as it exists now, look at and listen to and talk to your neighborhoods, your communities, take in the input and come up with, do we need to add any more locations to this plan? And there likely will be some, and we've heard some tonight, and those may not be the only ones. And then also kind of the reason for my other request was understanding a priority from the commissioners and looking for common ground. If that doesn't happen, that's okay too. We still have the same process, but I wanted to point out how it was prioritized traditional, historically in the past plans. And that doesn't necessarily mean it should be prioritized that way going forward. And that was another reason for asking the question. If you had the funding and the right of way to just put something here and now, where would you put it? And then, funding is going to be an issue regardless. So I don't think that should be a hindrance for the planning phase.
Lynn?
And I wasn't expecting that tonight. I was expecting that to just be assigned tonight. And I believe I say to for discussion and an agendized at a future meeting. And you could discuss amongst yourselves the timeline you'd like to bring that in, when you would like to meet again on this item, and I'd be happy to try and comply with that.
Okay, Lynn?
Yeah, how about every 2 weeks? I was wondering about, I wanted to ask a question about Carol Lane. Those people are practically prisoners in their own homes. They have children who go to school. They have to somehow get out of their homes along that road, which is practically a death trap. I'm amazed that there are not more problems with that road. There's very little space, and the people drive like bats out of hell, even though
speed bumps.
Even though there are speed humps there, they are still, drivers drive very fast up to the speed hump, then they go slowly over the speed hump, then they go very fast over the next speed hump, very slowly over the speed hump.
So Lynn, are you suggesting that Carol Lane, you want to change in the priority of Carol Lane? Would we frame that as you want to move it from the priority 2 list to a priority 1 list?
I would, yeah, but I would also want to know some counts and who uses and why and when and so on. Mm-hmm. But thinking about that and thinking about second is another one that it's heavy family use. They are not prisoners. It's Second Street up on the north side is a dead end, but as far as I know, I would have to go look, but it's way down on the priority list, and I don't think it should be. There are too many kids up there. Another thought that I have is that letter that Dawn Eames wrote, is if there's any way that we can squeak out a flat walkway to fill in over there. We're going to have children from the terraces walking down to Pleasant Hill Road, south on Pleasant Hill Road, over to Mount Diablo Boulevard, and those Stanley students, either going downtown or to Stanley, coming up on the south side of Mount Diablo Boulevard. And it's not such a dumb idea to get some kind of separation between the pedestrians and the automobiles that are like flies in there. So that's not a dumb idea, but I don't know whether her idea of funding is something else. I don't know about that much about it.
I wanted to bring up, well, we could talk about that now. I wanted to bring that letter up separately. Well, I see you, Vianney. We'll get to you in a minute.
Thank you. Sorry.
Commissioner Hadan is referencing a letter sent by Don Ames Monday, October 19th to the Transportation and Circulation Commission asking about Mount Diablo Boulevard getting it added to the list. My understanding is that section is already on the it's already on the walkways plan. So I
not in the way that she is asking for.
Sorry?
Not in the way that she is asking for. It was originally, there was a request to put in a formal curb and gutter and so on. That's not going to work very well for those businesses at that end. She is asking for a flat surface, but maybe imprinted with a walkway so that there could be some way to recognize where pedestrians might be in this mishmash of cars and patron cars and client cars versus the pathway.
Right. No, I understand that. So, but in terms of adding it to the walkways plan, I think it was already on the plan, and it's currently in the priority 1 section. So I don't know that Mike. It seems like we're going to have a lot of thinking to do about that and other streets. And what I was going to propose to the commissioners, or I was going to do this later, but I'll just say now. I keep hearing about the Safe Routes to Schools study. It's been on our list of items to discuss, and it might be worthy of us going through that either on our own or in discussing as a body prior to when we come back and talk about the walkways plan again. So that's Lynn.
Yeah, I noticed that Mike had Monroe on for the Lafayette school. Apparently one side of the street has no walkway and the other one is in terrible condition. What the parents very often will do is park their cars on Moraga Boulevard, and then they'll let the kids out, or they will walk with them if they're young enough. And so they shoot them off toward the school. So Monroe is in that pattern of the supply center being over by the park on Moraga Boulevard, but the kids have to have somewhere to walk. And it's better than a lot of locations, but it's not a perfect situation. Brook Street, I would certainly should take funding. I would put that probably at first priority, but I don't know. I don't remember the gaps. Where are the gaps on Brook? Do you remember gaps, Mike? Or do they have a location to walk? In other words, it's a matter of the least of the least bad of what we have.
Well, I don't know that you want to talk about the specific streets
we're
right
getting
now.
into the weeds.
Yeah, because that is the weeds, but you're right. There are gaps. They're on the west end of Brook Street, for example. And then you've got continuous sidewalk that a lot of people do use to walk children to the elementary school and even the junior high. So, but as just an example.
He had asked for two choices, and so
well, I think you've given me 6.
I would like to say something here.
Yes, Deanne.
Some of the data have to be flawed because, for example, Carol Lane is not used very much because it's so dangerous. But if there was a walkway, the usage would be incredibly increased. So the data that exists right now may not be a good way of going by, to come up with priorities. So that's all I'm trying to say. Carroll Lane is really a great place for kids or young people to go from further up from Mount Diablo all the way down to the schools. And it would be used a lot more if there was a real walkway. That's what I'm trying to say. And right now it's not used at all.
Yep. That's a good point, Vianney, and that was that echoes what some of the public comment also we heard public comment. Okay, so Mike, help us get back to what we need to get done here. Should we each give you like our thoughts around the quick?
No, I want you to bring them back individually. Honestly, I kind of wanted you to independently do it. Now, you don't have to take my advice because what I was looking for on that task is a common thread. Will 4 or 5 or 6 of you come up with the same location that seems to be the most important to you for whatever criteria you give it yourself? That was my thought and my reasoning. The update of the plan is going to include all of the discussion we've had, and it's going to take some work. It's going to take some mapping. It's going to take some charts. It's probably going to take some surveys. It's going to take some more data to do it justice, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Carl?
Lynn?
Yeah, were you given permission to hire a traffic engineer instead of a transportation planner?
We have to get to my later item for me to share that news, Lynn.
Oh,
Yeah, let's hold that for 7B. Thank you. Dick, what were you going to say, Dick?
A question back to Mike. So we talked earlier, and I think like Stella suggested, linear feet and more information, a better map. There's a lot of discussion earlier. Will we get more information and an update prior to talking about what our priorities are? Or do you want that first?
No, I think I want that first. I think I want just if we have other segments first, that doesn't have to be the only time we, cull data basically, or poll the commissioners. But it's a starting point, right? And I would want that first because if you give me a street somewhere, I don't need the map done first to know where that is. I can just add it, in the mapping and the segment.
Okay. So are we coming back to you separately, kind of one-on-one in emails, or will we have?
So you could do that. And then I actually would suggest that you separately email me and then I will tabulate it and share, as an agenda item that will continue this process of updating this plan. It's just one piece of the puzzle, really.
Aren't we each assigned to an area of Lafayette?
So Vianney, you could look at your individual areas, but I wouldn't want to restrict you because I really want you to consider citywide. Whether you personally use it or you just think that this would be a great use or an improvement. Again, I'm kind of looking if there's any common threads.
Oh, I see.
For prioritization.
Yeah, but each
and
of
there may
us
not be.
Yeah, but each of us know better our areas than others. So.
Okay, so let's do this then. For this action item, all the commissioners should send an email to Mike Moran and Therese, the usual channels, with their thoughts on what streets might be added or increased in priority. Does that sound acceptable? And then Lynn, you had a comment on what I'm saying?
I thought we were supposed to, instead of adding what we didn't have and so on, or an increase in priority, I thought that he was looking for 2 or 3 to actually spend money on and get done. No?
Well, I don't have the money to do them, Lynn. So really what I am asking for is the priority. And it's as if to say, if I had the money, these are the ones you would build first.
Okay.
And if they're important enough to enough of you, maybe the council will help us find the money and we will build them first.
All right.
Aren't we going to trample over the Brown Act if we act directly with you, Mike?
No, you individually can send me an email, then I will tabulate it, and it would only be distributed as part of an agendized item at a future meeting. And then we would meet publicly again, and so we wouldn't violate the Brown Act, okay? So don't email each other your streets.
Yes.
I got you.
That would be a violation,
Yes.
okay?
Yes.
All right. So Stella?
Yeah, just a clarification, Mike. We talked about the TARs, and so are there any TARs that you've received that have walkways that are requested that are not on in this walkway plan? And can you share that with us so we could consider those?
In a sense, that Burton Valley area, particularly around Burton Valley Elementary School, is an area, and Topper is a specific one. I am not aware of any others. I've had requests, for example, on Akalani's Road, on the far west end of town that goes up into Orinda, turns into Glorietta. I've had other requests, Moraga Road, sections of Moraga Road, but those are already on the walkways plan.
Okay, yeah, no, I was just interested in any that are not.
Yeah.
When you mentioned Topper, I interpreted School Street, both sides Moraga Road to Topper as including Topper, but that's just probably my own misreading of it.
So I'm sorry, Mike, did you have a response or that was just okay?
No, I mean, I did include Topper in a request for funding, a grant that is lumped with School Street and even a short section on St. Mary's Road, just because it's all surrounding those schools and the access to the schools, but it has not been added as part of a walkways plan onto the walkways plan update. That's something for you all to consider now.
Lynn?
Couldn't, just as an isolated thought, for the Birdhaven parents who have so many children in that little dish, wouldn't it be easy enough just to create a little barrier along the frontage somehow so that they could walk more safely to school? All we did when I think it was Santa Maria came to us, and they were having a terrible problem with people cutting through on the right of way there and almost running down their population. And it seems to me we, at that time, ordered a little delivery of great big rocks and put them there. And we haven't had another peep. Isn't there some easy way that we could facilitate a safer method of getting along St. Mary's Road from Birdhaven up to Topper, just by doing something like that?
Along St. Mary's, there is something we could probably do to that effect, but now you're talking about a specific project, and that would be, for example, if that became a priority based on this process, then we could try and look at specifics. The issue I have, Lynn, is that mostly anything I build infrastructure-wise in the public right-of-way needs to be ADA compliant. So that isn't a dirt path on the side of the road guarded by large boulders. I can't do that. Individual residents have done essentially that, if they have big enough frontages and so forth, but we also can't just allow big boulders in the right-of-way, because now we've perhaps included a hazard that somebody runs into, and then they sue the city and the property owner and so forth.
How far north does the right of way go beyond the pavement? Do you have any idea?
Lynn, I think we should, Mike, I'm sorry. I think that this should be
back in the weeds.
I think we're getting, I want to wrap this item up soon.
Yeah.
So, Lynn, what I'd encourage you to do is include that area in your email to Mike. I think if the
could be easily solved by the homeowner and some of the neighbors if the right of way is theirs and not the city's. That's why I asked the question.
No, I get it, but let's, as Mike said, let's maybe convert that to a priority the area. So why don't we give him the feedback that this is something we want to pursue? Okay. And if the other commissioners have any opinions, I would suggest that we all get our information to Mike by next week, would be the 28th. Is that soon enough or not soon enough, Mike?
That's more than soon enough.
Okay.
So, I mean, I would actually give yourselves a little more time than that, because I want you to drive these locations. I want you to look at them. I want you to, you know, kind of do your checkoff list.
Okay.
I mean, you could tell me how long that would take, you know, amongst yourselves. But I mean, if you think a week's enough, I'll take it, and I would be happy to put together the table.
Let's do 2 weeks.
When do you think we'll have our next Circulation Commission meeting?
Well, when we had the next one, I was hoping to have my next item back, the report to share. I don't have it. When we get to it, I kind of share a timetable.
Okay. No, I guess the question is, should then we give commissioners as much time as they want, or should we set a deadline?
I would set a deadline. I just, a week was faster than I was thinking. I mean,
okay, and I agree. That's fine. So would the commissioners be open to setting a deadline of, say, November 11th?
Sounds good.
Good to me.
Okay, then everybody please send your comments on this issue to Mike by November 11th. All right.
We cannot copy the chairman, can we?
No, don't copy me.
Okay.
Send it just to Mike and copy Therese.
Oh, Therese as well. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Therese Kane. You can.
Right.
It's on the
That
email.
way, I definitely won't lose it.
Right.
Very nice.
Okay. All right. I think that wraps up what we need to talk about for item 5B. Is that correct? Then I want to move to item 6A, the new business. I know that Mike, do you want to give us an update, and then I have something to say?
Sure. So, I mean, really my update is I don't have an update, right? But I know that people have been asking about this, the public speakers, this complete street safety assessment is in process. I had seen a draft, almost maybe a pre-draft, made comments. I've returned it. It's being worked on. I really thought it'd be done by now. It's just not. Okay, so I don't have a deadline. It should be within weeks of now, not months. But my hope was to bring this back to you. This will stem into the pilot study at Burton Valley and other things we want to try in other areas. So my hope is that this would be a all-encompassing, you know, I could put out the report to all commissioners so that you would have time to review it, go through it, come up with any questions, and we would have a meeting that would be going through this report. You could give me feedback. I can even at that time, even if it's a final plan, go back to the authors with questions, right? And then following that, I see breakout groups, like community meetings for a pilot study and so forth. Certainly the Burton Valley is already kind of earmarked for one because we had feasibility study funds. And as you may or may not know, we had a subcommittee meeting of TransCirc, and one of the reasons for that subcommittee meeting a couple weeks ago was to sort of get the authorization to use feasibility funds for an actual pilot study that could stem from suggestions that we've already heard and also from this complete street safety assessment report. So that's what I see happening next. When that happens, I mean, I can't hit go until I get the report, right? And then there could be one more minor iteration even after I get this report. I don't know what form it's going to be in, but I suspect I will have one more bite at the apple to answer questions or to provide input. And that would be it. And then we would receive it in a final form. So my hope was to, and still is, and plan to bring it to TransCirc as soon as it's available, you know, giving you I would say at least a full week to review this. It's not going to be a 1,000-page report, but it's going to be 50 pages. So I want to give you time to digest it and look through it. I will add that this report, it might have some citywide strategies, but it is focused on the Pleasant Hill Road corridor, the Moraga Road, School Street, First Topper corridor around the schools, and Burton Valley around the school. Okay, so what was left out was Happy Valley, basically. So those are going to be the areas of focus. And as I mentioned already, one fallout from that will certainly be the Burton Valley pilot study that we want to implement as soon as we can, but it's not likely to start until I get this report. And then we have, I would say, 2 more meetings. One to go over this report in general, and one to break out what can we do for this pilot study. And that's going to take some solicitation of the community and sharing what could happen and getting participation. And also, one of the authors of this study has agreed to kind of help run the breakout session. Ideally, we would be meeting in person and we'd have a big map up, or we'd have photos up and people could point and show and say, this is what I experienced here. And we could consider that. It's, you know, the mode we're in, that's not likely to happen. It's still likely to be, you know, a Zoom meeting or some sort of electronic meeting. So it's not much I can do about that other than work with what we have. So that's kind of my update on that. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay. Hold on, Lynn, I'll get you next. My comment was going to be, and I think you were on the email, but I wanted to just make sure that when this comes back, that we make sure that we include public comments from the first time, particularly Megan's email from September 29th. In other words, so when it comes back with the report, we want to make sure that we incorporate, of course, public feedback. But that one's already been sent in. I don't want it to get lost. So, okay, Lynn, you had a comment?
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting report, but my kids grew up in Burton Valley, and I'm very familiar with the traffic in Burton Valley. And I don't understand why we're doing this pilot project in Burton Valley that probably has the safest traffic of any of the school districts. We can't say that about Lafayette School. We can't say that about Happy Valley School. We can't say that about Spring Hill. We can't say it about Stanley. Why Burton Valley?
So Lynn, I would say this, well, maybe Burton Valley residents have been the most vocal, but if you recall, this went through a process, and this was with James Hinkamp to get feasibility study funds. And we did a TDA grant. This is going back maybe 2.5, 3 years now. And it would be utilizing those funds for this because they were specifically set aside for this area. Now, what went into your choice at that time, it isn't to necessarily exclude anybody else, but for whatever reason, it was included at that time, and we still haven't followed up on it. And we have funds available. We don't have them available for another area right now. That wouldn't be the correct use. So it did go through some process, and honestly, it was really even before I came on with Justin.
Okay, thanks. I was wondering.
Other questions? Oh, I didn't ask. Before I finish up other questions, I want to open this up for, since it is an agenda item, I open this up for public comment. If there's any public comments, please raise your hand. And in the meantime, well, I see one hand.
Megan Midman.
Okay.
Not meaning to keep you guys up. I wanted to weigh in just on that one particular comment that Lynn just made and that Mike was asking about, why Burton Valley. We have no sidewalks or bicycle facilities in on all of Burton Valley, including right in front of the school. So the area that people walk and bike is where people park, right? And so occasionally if there's no cars there, then there's great wide open spaces. But if there's cars parked there, in the blocks adjacent to the school, there's absolutely no bicycle or pedestrian facilities at all in the entire neighborhood, except for maybe 2 different blocks that are not adjacent. So I just wanted to, you know, and there was a young boy who died in Burton Valley this summer, and shall we remember Leo and the urgency of responding to a person who died in front of the elementary school this summer too. So I take issue with the that it's just because people are vocal. We're vocal because we're concerned, and we don't want more people to die in the neighborhood. And I just think that that's important, that it's not left to be because people are speaking up that they're getting attention. It's because there's safety issues that we're getting the attention. And I'm more than happy to have those safety issues and the rest of the city equally get attention. I agree that there are many, many for us, and we've not been prioritizing it.
Could I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we had, when I was in charge of all this stuff, and the trail and the bike lanes and so on and so on, we had quite a regimen going in all of the schools for bike training, for pedestrian training. I wonder if we still have that going now. The kids don't seem to know exactly where to ride, how to ride. We lived 2 years in The Hague, and kids get bicycle training. They are required to ride like adults, and those laws are enforced, even for children. The streets have been the same since my kids went to school at Burton and at Fairview Elementary, which is now Burton Valley. Nothing has changed since that time. If anything, at least they're not riding 10 speeds without knowing how to operate. That was a big help because we had thousands of accidents at that time. So I don't know if we have the training going because I haven't asked anyone, but if we don't have the training going in the schools and in the community, we should start.
Thank you, Lynn. All right, so there's a next. Thank you. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Oh, let's see. We have Jennifer Lieberman to speak, followed by Abby Fateman and Jessica Lordan.
Okay.
Hi, this is Jennifer Lieberman from Burton Valley again. I just wanted to comment about the question about why Burton Valley, and I'm going to echo what Megan said. Megan and I have been working since the end of 2017 to improve safety in Burton Valley. There are no facilities. When you take a look at the master walkway plan, there is nothing in Burton Valley. There are fog lanes on the side of the road. And when pedestrians or cyclists need to get to school, they have to maneuver around parked cars. There is a need for improvements in the Burton Valley area. I think Leo's death weighs heavily on all of us. My son was a classmate of Leo's. The amount of grief that our community has had to process as a result of his death is not insignificant. So I'm committed to this, and that's why we're here, not just for Burton Valley though, but for the entire city. Yes, I live in Burton Valley and I want to see improvements made, but I have spent time to meet with Jennifer Paul in person and to understand what we're doing with Spring Hill. I have met with Jessie Lordan in the trails area. This is a citywide issue. It also needs to be addressed in Burton Valley.
Thank you for that comment. Okay.
The next speaker is Abby Fateman.
Abby.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Oh, great, thanks. Yeah, I just quickly wanted to follow up on the last comment. You know, from previous two public comments, as well as what Commissioner Hedin was also talking about, was that you're correct, the streets haven't changed. But what has changed are the people and how they're using them, as well as the vehicles that are on the streets and how those vehicles are engineered and how those vehicles are using them. We have an introduction of cell phones and distractions. We have introduction of much larger vehicles that create shorter sight lines. We have cars that are more insulated from the outside environment. And they're not aware of the kids that are walking or riding bikes, or even each other, or parked cars for that matter. I live in Burton Valley on Michael Lane. We've had probably 3 cars totaled that are parked on our street. And there's been no follow-up by police in terms of, you know, they're deemed accidents. And my question is, are they really accidents, or are they a result of people's behavior and the engineering of the street and us not keeping up with the times in how we manage our streets and use our streets? And so I think the time is now more than ever with the pandemic and people stuck at home, more delivery trucks on the streets, more food delivery, people using the streets at all different times, and kids out on the streets at different times to absolutely address these issues. And I know we've talked about this at city council meetings and circulation commission meetings and in written comments, but I think, you know, when the question is why Burton Valley, there's a plan that's ready to go in Burton Valley. A lot of work has been done in Burton Valley. The advocates here, Jen and Megan and Jennifer Paul, are happy to work in other areas. You know, my kids aren't even elementary school kids anymore. My kids are in high school and college, and they didn't ride their bikes to Akalani's because it's terrifying to ride from Burton Valley to Akalani. So we are here not as advocates just for our community, but for the whole city. And we're starting locally because we've had a huge tragedy in our area. And, you know, I battled with the traffic calming process probably in 2012. Yeah, 2012, when I first moved here. My kids were little and riding bikes to Burton Valley. So we're starting with what we know, but need to expand that to the rest of the city. And we're happy to put that effort in other parts of the city. But we're starting here because this is where we have a fatality and where our kids are and where we're working right now on this issue. So I really appreciate the attention that Mike Moran is giving this, and the council members are giving this, and the Circulation Commission are giving this, because it's not just about people walking and riding. It's about, you know, our kids' life and death. And I know you are all aware of that and you all know that, but it feels like we just need to keep bringing it back to this is actually life and death. And we actually now have dead people in the city because we aren't managing this. And so there's an emergency that we need to address, and we're asking it to start here in Burton Valley. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Stella, you want to follow up?
Yeah, you know, I just wanted to jump in here again. I think several times in past meetings over the past year or so, I've requested that the Lafayette Police Department provide us with reports of collisions, bike ped, and automobile pedestrian. And tell me what we need to do. Do I need to make a motion that we add this to an agenda for a future meeting to discuss and then go from there? Because I really would like to see this move along a bit. I just feel like we're thinking in a vacuum to some degree. We hear about anecdotal issues, and I mean, certainly we know about the fatalities, but I'm sure that there are a number of other incidents that don't ultimately result in death, but that can still be very significant. And I feel that even when we're looking at the Master Walkways plan and prioritizing streets, safety is foremost in my mind. And without that information about the actual safety in areas in the city, I feel like I'm missing some data that I need. So do I need to make a motion to put this on an agenda to discuss at a future meeting?
Yes.
I don't think you need an agenda, but Mike, when we get to your update, we'll talk about the next meeting, and usually Mike passes on a preview of the agenda before it's posted, but Well, let's just ask Mike. Is that something that we can add to a next meeting?
I won't have
The
data
question
to
would be,
provide
the
you.
question
Yeah.
would be, I'm sorry, the question would be, is somebody from the police going to be available to talk to us?
They won't have what Stella's asking for, and I can explain it a little more when we get to that item on my update.
Okay.
Maybe I could just clarify. So I know ultimately I want the data, but I'm just wondering if the commission needs to take an action to make a formal
Request.
statement to the police or request to the police to say, this is a priority for this commission for these reasons. And then the police would take that under advisement and the process would move on.
I'm open to that being an agenda item. So.
Can we hear from Mike, at least with his report?
I don't want to get us off of this one. You're still in public comment on this item. So
let's talk. You're right. Let's bring that.
I don't want to not talk about that again. I do, Stella, and I think we can at 7B.
Okay.
Okay. Very good.
We'll bring that up again. Thank you, Stella.
And I made a note there at 7B.
Thank you. And thanks for reminding us. There's one more person who wants to talk.
Yes, Jessica Lordan is waiting.
Okay.
Hi again, Jessica Lordan on Birdhaven. I just really want to echo all the things that everyone else has been saying regarding, the Burton Valley area. Things are not as they were before. They're not as they were when this master walkway plan was initiated, right? In 2007, Birdhaven had trail access. This wouldn't be an issue. Now we don't. In the last 5 years since that master walkway plan was initiated, we've had 4 new families move in with a total of 10 new kids. And the oldest is now 7. So we've got tons of kids coming through this. And that's all the neighborhoods. I mean, all of Lafayette has turned over. There's tons of new families. People are moving here for the schools. And we need to get people to school safely. Regarding the data from the police department, we actually had to go through a lot of hoops, but we did get that information pulled for Topper Lane and the incidents that happened there. The problem with that I ran into there is that they didn't want to take my statement when my son got run off the road because he wasn't injured. He didn't have to go to the hospital. And it shouldn't take somebody going to the hospital to make the police report to then be like a check mark. Yeah, okay, this is something that needs to be addressed. So I think it's absolutely worthwhile to get that information, and it was worthwhile for our area. But it also needs to be taken with a grain of salt that not everything that happens gets reported.
Thank you for that comment. Any other questions of the speaker? All right, I'm going to close the public comment section on this, and thank you everybody for your comments. I think we've exhausted the discussion on this item unless any of the commissioners have something else. Otherwise, I don't know if anybody waving their hand. Otherwise, thank you, Mike, for the update on this. And I think we all look forward to seeing this report, as I know you do. So thanks a lot for bringing this up.
I can bring him down with Grace or Finn when Stella on Transportation Commission. Hello?
Hello, I
hear someone say my name.
Hold on.
Hear somebody, but can't see somebody.
Oh, this is Abby. I'm not making another public comment. I don't know why my
audio... okay. So
I was telling somebody that Stella just made a good comment. That's what I'm saying, Stella. But I was not saying that to you, but now I am.
Thank you. Teresa, can you move Abby out?
Yeah, no more speakers.
Thank you. All right. So let's move to item 7A, Commissioner reports. Does anybody have anything show and tell?
Carl, if I could.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to pick up on the general plan for a minute, and this is more maybe a question. So my role here, primary function, is to be the liaison with this group, and certainly Lynn went through this before. How do we do that? Should I, take time? I don't want to take a lot of time at every meeting, but part of my role is to get feedback from everybody here going forward. Is that a discussion at these meetings, or do we do it offline? In which case, you know, we have the Brown Act. So I'd just like thoughts and guidance on how this goes forward with Stella's backup also.
Mike, do you have
How you doing, babe?
any feedback based on
What are you
what
working
you've
on?
heard in staff meetings?
I'm sorry?
I was asking Mike for his input
Oh,
based on any
okay.
staff meetings.
Yeah, I think that you do want to do it at an agendized meeting. I think you want to provide an update, but also solicit input. And it might be, you know, this is a long process. This is a 5-year process. So, you know, I don't know how fast you need to return information back to the group, you know, if it's monthly or if some items will be over a longer span of time. But certainly if you have a specific question for the group, I can include that in the agendized item, or as the representative for the plan, you have questions. I can write that up, or you can just email it to me, and I can include it specifically on the agenda so that people could see it and either come prepared with those answers to those questions, or just know they're going to be discussed at the meeting. But I would do it through the meeting, and then I would solicit information through staff.
Okay.
I have hold on a second, Lynn. Was there discussion of in this process? Are there going to be meeting minutes taken of the GPAC meetings? Dick?
I think it'll be like these, where it'll be on YouTube. I don't think there's going to be a printed minutes.
Okay, Lynn, you had a question?
Yeah, it's too bad if there's not printed material, because you can scan that so much faster than you can sit and listen to a meeting all over again. But I think that we should have, and I believe personally that each commission should have an update of what the group talked about, what they decided, what they wanted to know, where they were going with all the various different ideas. Very important. And then give Richard and or Dick and Stella feedback so that they might be able to carry that back to the committee if they want to.
The reason I just say the reason I mentioned, if there's any printed material, you can always send out a link and point things of interest.
Honestly, I don't know that. I'm just assuming it's going to be like these meetings, but I don't.
Yeah,
maybe,
I don't know.
Maybe it'll be right. Yeah.
Well, I'll send a note and try and find out.
Okay.
Who else has anything to share? Anybody?
Well, we wanted to know from Mike.
Yeah, well, I've got some, no, that's not, nope. Hold on. I wanted to share that this morning, there was an online seminar or webinars called the Vision Zero. It was a Vision Zero Cities Summit online. I signed up for a seminar, but I was so busy with work, I had to drop off it. It was basically a presentation by the MTC commissioners and also some people from Fair and Peers. So I had, I paid my $10, so I'll be able to go back and listen to that at some point, and I will send out notes if there's anything that's worth sharing. Okay, so that's what I have. So on to item B, Mike, staff updates.
Okay, let me bring it back the police reports. So Stella, Justin was working on this, and we were even mapping them with GIS all over the city, citywide, going back a period of time. And that stopped when he left, and our GIS, he was kind of like a short-term left as well. I can't do anything with it until I get staff. What we did run into were two things. One of the speakers brought up was that there's a lot of incidents that people may know about that there's never a police report generated for whatever reason. Probably most incidents, certainly most close calls. And two, the police reports are not broken out so that you can sort them by pedestrian or bicycle. I don't know why. That seems odd to me. You should be able to sort things pretty quickly. So you have to do an extensive look at every one of the accidents to find out, was this a single vehicle? Was there destruction of property? That is broken out if there's destruction of property. And is there an injury? And that might be broken out. But you don't know if it's an injury to a driver, to a pedestrian, to a passenger, of another vehicle. It's just not broken out that way. So we were trying to do at least an update of the last couple years of police reports on what they were and actually map them. So, and again, that won't be complete data, because there are incidents that, as you probably all know, there's fender benders out there that, it's just worked out between the parties, and an insurance company may get involved and fix something or not, but there isn't a police report necessarily. So we're not going to get, the full story, but we'll get a partial story. At least you'll get, there may be some intense areas and other areas where there's just been, no accidents for years and years. So I don't see returning to that until we get additional staff. We did get approval to rehire staff after being in our freeze due to this pandemic. We did and are advertising for a traffic engineer. I'm actually requesting a licensed traffic engineer for various reasons, but I've shared with others. I mean, a big reason is because we have lost Chuck DeLue, and he handled that very professionally for us for many, many years. And it will help to have that in-house. The position has definitely been advertised more of a hybrid. There's definitely still the planning parts of this. For example, as brought up tonight, the local roadway safety plan, that's going to be handled by this person when they get here. I might get an RFP out for it before that, but really the plan's going to have to work with this staff person. The consultant's going to have to work with that staff person. So there's just a lot that we can't keep going right now. I will certainly commit that if we get this complete street safety assessment back soon, I will bring it back to you as fast as reasonable, regardless of if we have more staff by then or not. I certainly don't think we're going to have a hire before next year. At this point, there's a process, and then somebody has to actually want the job as well. So it may have been advertised today. I looked at a revised version of the advertisement yesterday or the day before. So that's my update on the staff. Unfortunately, I've been in this position more than once over the last couple of years. Somebody mentioned working with Leah just 5 years ago, and we are 3 transportation planners past that.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry to report.
But I'm still very happy for you, and for all of us. Then it's a good step forward.
I am too. I'm certainly glad that we were given permission to pursue this, and there's more than enough work for this person.
Yeah. Stella, you had a question?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, Mike, for the update. And I'm also echo the appreciation for getting a new staffer, hopefully sooner rather than later. We'll all keep our fingers crossed for you. And I think it would be great to put on a future agenda discussion of the data that we might get from the police, because I think there's some other things that we could explore, like perhaps deciding as a commission what type of data we would like, and maybe there could be some of that collected at those events so that we do get more of the finer grained information about who are the parties involved. And I completely understand that if no one calls for the police, a police report doesn't happen, an incident report doesn't happen, but there may also be some opportunities perhaps to get maybe some more. I know I was involved in a small fender bender, and I just thought, oh, you call the police and that's what they do. They write a report, your insurance gets the report and it all gets sorted out. And they said, well, if there's no injury, No, we don't come. So fair enough. Okay, there was no injury. So that I understand. But I would certainly hope that if someone called and there was, as the public comment was made, even the, I don't know how to describe this, the threat of injury. I just feel like there should have been a report taken when a child and their parent is almost run off of a street by a vehicle.
Yeah, but that's very tough.
Whether there was injury or not, that it just seems like something that should be happening. So if we could discuss this as a commission at future date, I think that would be great. And then maybe we could provide that kind of feedback if we all agree to the police department.
Yeah, and yeah, hold on, Lynn. I also wondered, I don't know if other cities have any kind of mechanism for crowdsourced data, if there's any way to do that, because if citizens can report seeing things, that also might be, now it wouldn't be necessarily be verified, but something I'm just curious if any commissioner happens to look into or see, the issue of crowdsourced data, that'd be interesting. Lynn and then Biani.
Yeah, back several decades, we had a fatality also. I guess you all know that little second grade girl. Nothing like seeing a child in a casket to motivate a person. But we took a tally. There were no statistics in our police department at that time for bike accidents either. Any kind of accidents that were not horrifically awful. And we took tallies in the schools. We might be able to do that again when school starts. I don't know how you would go about it just over the internet, but there are forms that can be filled out. We came up with newspaper headlines that rocked the socks off of the people of Lafayette, I can tell you. There were thousands. Of course, the 10-speed was new at that time, and kids were riding them who should never have been riding them, but we did get statistics, and they were in the multiple thousands of unreported accidents. And when those hit the newspapers, it was quite dramatic, I have to say. So there are ways of getting people to fill out papers once the kids are back in school. And that might be worth doing. I would be very tempted.
Okay.
It has interesting results.
Yeah, the police should have reports anytime, anything that where there's a bodily injuries, because insurance is going to go after it too. So they have to have a list of all the accidents that includes, injuries.
So is the—
They have to.
Yes, thank you, Biani. So is the consensus that this is something that should be discussed at a future?
Yes, absolutely.
I think so.
People are shaking their heads. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but almost accidents, Stella, almost accidents where nothing has happened. It's words against those words. There is nothing they can do.
Yeah. Well, we might be looking for patterns. Okay, so.
Yeah, but then it has to be reported still, and who's going to keep tally? You see.
Right. Okay, so we'll look to discuss this and investigate this a little further at a meeting sometime. Lynn?
Yeah. One of the problems that exists with bicycling, and I think it was true of this young boy at Burton Valley also, kids will ride right into the cars. They will ride right into the buses or the van, in this case with the young boy. Particularly if they're wrong way traffic, or if it's an angular traffic of some kind, they just smash right into them. If you're on the wrong side of the street and you don't know that you shouldn't be on that side of the street because maybe your parents taught you to walk on that side of the street so you see the oncoming traffic, but if you ride on that side of the street and you come to a blind corner, you're smashed into another car probably.
Well, I'm sorry, Lynn, what's
it has nothing
the tie-in with the report?
Yeah, it has nothing to do.
Statistics.
No, hold on, Danny. No, I'm sorry, what were you trying to connect?
Statistics and training are just extremely important. And if you don't have the statistics, nobody knows that they need the training.
So it's need for, yeah, okay. Thank you, Mike. Is there anything else you wanted to update us on? Okay. I appreciate all of the comments tonight and everybody's participation. I thank you very much. And I'm going to call this meeting, say this meeting is adjourned. It's 9:15 p.m.
No, I have one question.
Everybody.
I have one question to Mike. May I?
Well, the meeting's closed.
Okay. All right.
All right. But you want to
Email
send
me,
him
Vianney.
Vianney, send him an
or
email.
call.
Thank you.
Email or call. I'll be happy
Yeah.
to.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Therese, and you can close the meeting, please.
Will do.
Thank you very much.